All right, there we are. Hello, kind and gentle folk. How are we doing this evening? Sorry for my working hiatus. Uh-oh. Sorry for my we went to JCK the trade show, and then I got kidnapped to LA for almost 2 weeks to work on a couple projects. Yeah, been fairly exciting, but there was no streaming from LA because I didn't have a webcam with me. And didn't really have the bandwidth to deal with it. So here we are. We're back. Welcome to another night of crits. We'll see how it goes. We have a few things up. For those of you who have not uploaded models, please do. Hey, there we are. How we doing? Are we up on everybody else's? YouTube on? It says online. Facebook says online. So I am assuming that we are on. Henry is busy. Don't really have him to go. Yeah. I think that Mikko, you're first. Can everyone hear me? Is sound okay? Okay, wonderful. You just check you. Okay. I wonder. Oh well. We will just assume that. Okay, cool. And then if anyone's on Facebook, yell and tell us that it's working. That would be helpful. But other than that, I think we're going right into all this. Oh, yeah. Well, this was our convention where I was in LA, so all I had was my convention clothes. So when I flew back today, I have the workshop convention shirt on. Has everyone had a lovely couple of weeks while I was slaving for the man? So firstly, we have Mikko. Oh, well. Can you talk? You're in the thing? Say something. Oh, there you are. Barely here. Can you hear me? There you are. Can everyone hear him? Say something.
1-1.
There you are. All right. Looks like we got. Cool. Alrighty. So this is the first part. Are these going to be pendants? Yeah.
Yes.
Right
but this is a wrong file. There is an updated version. It's called Mikko pendants 1309. Yes, this.
This one? And this one? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
There are several pieces.
Okay. Alrighty.
With folders. One with the file with folders. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Pendant 2. Loaded a bunch of you. Hey, Facebook is good. Very cool. I will get over and download them in a moment. Yep. Weird creature. All right. we'll start here. So I would say one thing just right off the bat. Under normal circumstances, if I'm going to do pendants, I like this to look like it's a little bit more part of the part as opposed to just slapped on the back. So you might want to think about at least maybe taking like maybe make this kind of tie into one of these fins or something like that, just so it doesn't look like it comes back down to intentionality, just so it doesn't look like you just stuck something on the back. If you spend that little time and energy to make it feel as if you thought about what it's doing, that intentionality gives a distinctive perceived value. So, kind of wrap your head around trying to make the bail at least look like it's tied into all of it. And that's helpful intentionality. I do like that everything is textured in the back. The other thing you might want to think about is if you think that this is hanging right here, right? This is hanging off center. So this is going to make this point sort of dig into the sternum a little more. So you also may want to consider where have the and just give it just a touch of a bend, and that will make sure that that piece isn't just jamming into the sternum, and that makes it a little bit more wearable. And you can get away with kind of putting it at a slight arc, and what that'll do, that moves that over to here, and you can see that now it's hanging a little bit closer to center of the weight, and you can also just make this if you make, instead of the high point being at the back of that, make the high point sort of here, and that fades back, and now it's actually going to hang from that highest point, if that makes sense. And so now if we come over here and look from the highest point, that's much closer to the center of the body of gravity, right? And that's going to wear a little bit more comfortably, poking it. So think of ways of trying to get it up and off the body a little. Right. And I think that'll help some as well. I like the designs. I like that you're breaking up your noise, and so the chaotic versus calm. Right, here you have something that's sort of smoother, and then this has a lot more detail in it. So you're giving the eye a place to rest as opposed to it just being, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that that's good. You may even want to
8? Oh no, this is another one.
Right, you can see just making that point even a little smoother. See how it lifts that off the background a little bit more. So you may want to smooth this out just a little bit more, where it becomes a slightly less, where it's just smoother, and then that way you have a lot of texture, very little texture, and that's going to make this ring stand up and off the background a little bit more. This is a little bit more texture, and then you go back into chatter. So yeah, I think you're definitely on the track there.
Okay, so I will flatten more.
Yeah, I think so. Just this ring right here, because if you and I'm strokes. And once, this is not what I'm saying your solution, but I'm just trying to look down here because I don't have the right radial, right? But if you look right here, and I've bent it, so it's not. If we come in and I delete it, that's why I'm just winging it down. I'm just working on these bottom three because I bent it so it's, in the right place. Smart.
Lol.
You can see where I'm heading with it. Do as I say, not and see how on these bottom 3 or 4 here, how it really punches the different. It makes this ring a lot more energetic because you've made this planar. So when you're doing radials, make sure to have some that are calming to the eye and not very complex, and then do complexity, and it allows it to pop out and really stand different levels of stuff as a just something that's super cacophonous. I also find that, and I think you did it here, where let's say this is 24, then do a ring of 12, and then do a ring of 24, where it's multiples, but because that way the brain will recognize the multiplicity of it. But, you have places for the eye to relax, if that makes
sense. Yes,
yeah.
For sure.
And with the back, I think you've got that, right? See, this is sort of smooth. And then this has a lot of lines, smooth. And that's allowing you to, that's good. Right? You're controlling the rhythm where these sort of become what's dictating the pattern. So pattern. You have a big arrow pointing down. You're bringing your eye to the center of it. And I know this is the back, so this is doing well, right? I think you get a little busy around the focus, which is the right. You have some calm space in here, but it's still pretty liney. And then you have a bunch of this stuff going on, and this has a bunch of lines in it. but then this has a lot of hectic lines. I think that you might be better served if, let's see. See, by doing that, how the eye becomes more of the focus.
Yes.
So I would say on this one, break up the chattery detail. On top, it's fine as long as you have sort of this is calm and sort of pointing down at it, you know, and then maybe calm here, and then have your chatter come up and around in here. So you have these moments of relaxation for the eye. Have that be chatter. Right, where you have a calm space here pointing up, and that's accenting this counterpoint. Having the chatter here, having chatter here, but kind of having the chatter point out, you know, follow around there. And then if you have this being calm, this being calm, this being calm, and then this noisiness, and I would probably bring like hash marks into the bottom eye here. So you're using these hash marks to do the framing. Right, and that's going to give you and see how that kind of brings it back to the center a little more. I don't quite know how, you know, necessarily to resolve these. You know, I'm not saying just make them flat. I'm just saying try to figure out a place for the eye to relax around the very highly detailed center area.
Probably the top of the E is too busy. I just can.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a simple enough process, you know. Oh, thanks, Red. Right. So I think because especially since you have, you know, this is a calm space, this is hectic. This is a calm space, this is hectic because these are so much bigger. I just think you could break this up somehow where you're getting that calm and hectic going a little bit more. Yeah. I think once again, you may want
It's an array. Leaves are created via one leaf and array.
yeah, no, I think oops, I didn't See how just smoothing that out some really makes that center pop?
Yes.
Yeah. I would say work on getting your textures to work with you to get the focus happening, you know. It's an issue that a lot of people, when they're starting to do a lot of detail, is how do you give an eye, how do you dictate where the eye is traveling by using texture? And you're real close. I just think that you need to find some places for the eye to relax, and that calm space is really going to allow you to frame, throughout the hectic, right? Now Henry had some work stuff to do late, so he might show up a little later. Not sure. I'm Henryless. He's abandoned me because I blew off the last two.
No.
No. Totally kidding. Yeah, I think learning to use, or focusing a little more on using your calm space and chaotic space to really make the two pop by contrast. But they're fun. I mean, obviously, you're probably going to pick in, so there's section. Because all that
yes,
undercut.
I will need to move it back to the base.
But,
yes.
Yeah, but that's... Oh, this looks great. Now, is this a different set? Or... Well, this is a much better bail. Right, because it's sort of tying into the form. This is a different version of the same one.
Yes.
I like this bail a lot.
Okay. I can stick with it.
Well, I'm just saying, I just think because it's integrated into the form, you know, it's not just tossed on there. Every side of it. June 26. Cool. Center. Punch. And see how that center ring pops dramatically more just by simplifying that.
It's obvious, yes. Thank you.
Yep. I think that just work on your sort of calm neck. Do they look great? You have any questions?
For the last one with leaves, how would I put them in the end when the piece is updated? I mean, I have to blow them up to the bottom to get a printable edition of this one, yes?
Well, you definitely need to do a little bit of closing up on them. So what I would do is, um, do Control W, get everything the same. Oh, you haven't come first. You want to mesh. Uh, Make mesh. I would probably have duplicated before I did. So now you have one mesh. It's only 5 mil, right? Because you were at 8, so that would have made this, 60,000 or 60 million. So I just lowered it down. We brought it to 5 million. Now, turn W, Control W. So it's all one poly group. Now I'm going to go group front. Now the front and back are different poly group. So I've hidden the back. I'm just going to mask that off. And now my back is there. Grab W, bring it down. I'm just drag it down a touch. And that's going to kind of cross over all those dark, or we're crossing over all the things that are open. We're bringing that down and through their space, so we're solid. See, there's a so it's past. You can come here and kind of drag this; it'll get a little flatter. We don't see. You can see here, right? I'm not seeing undercuts on the back side. Here, Dynamax 3 million, and it's going to go. And like I said, I would have duplicated. We can undo history back to our higher res and history and higher res, but I think this. So now we have a 3 million poly shell. And you still have detail on the back. It has thickness, so it doesn't have undercuts. First thing, whenever I do something like this, it's really important. I will do auto groups, and then I'm going to hold down Control Shift and tap this. And what that does is these are noisy Boolean processes a lot because you've just dragged a bunch of different layers into it, and you get a lot of chatter, or you have the capacity to get chatter. And so auto group, hold on Control Shift and tap. So that is selecting the shell, and I'm going to see how split hidden comes up. Usually I just hit delete hidden, but split hidden. And okay, and nothing came up. So this was actually I went back too far. Delete. And then check mesh integrity, fix mesh, close hole. Sometimes you have to go a few times. So now that we've done that, and we're still failing, even after closing holes, right? It's failing. Now, auto group, split hidden. Stop. Love how much. All right. So when you do this, sometimes that's very hard to get a shell again. Because like I said, you've dragged all here, let's flip it and look at it. So there's a lot of these little areas right here that are long and stretchy and going in between because we've dragged that stuff through like stuff. So sometimes it's really difficult to get it to be a clean shell. I tend to just redynamesh it at the same thing. Get it one more. And as long as you're keeping the same. That's why keep the original so you can so there. You can see that by just redynameshing it one more time, like if you try it a few times and it doesn't fix it, just redynamesh it and you now have a shell. Because if it gives you the, I just use get metal prices as my check for the whether it's a shell or not. Because if it's not a watertight shell, it won't give you metal price. Instead of going through the analysis where you have to do hits, that's just one hit and then and you can see we've lost a little bit of the detail in the dynameshing, and that's why you can see we have our resolution. You can always come here, hold down control, make that history state, and you can come back here and either hand brush it through, or here's another place where I would go group front. And now you only have this front part because I don't want it, because that very likely has a bunch of weird noise. I just want the front to look good. I'm gonna come here.
Sorry that I interrupt you. People on the stream write that your mix sensitivity for the stream is too low because it really lags a bit. I just checked while you were talking.
So they can't hear me? Is that what I'm hearing?
They can hear you, but sometimes mic just drops and it
it's the
touch.
Oh, it's the Discord has that automatic. Is that better there?
Let me check.
Is that better? Better? Better?
For me, it's better.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
sounds
better? Okay. Let's see if it drops out. Sorry about that. We didn't have time to really do sound checks with Henry, so I was just guessing. Even though this is directly.
It's a bit too loud now.
It's a bit too loud?
Yes, on the stream.
Get my mic back out of my face. How's that? Is that better?
Seems fine.
Is that fine? Everyone, can you hear me? Does it sound okay? All right. Well, I'm going to run with that and someone yell at me if it's off. So this is where I'll group front again. And now, since we have the history state, we're going to come in and then project to history. And that will take the stuff back up to, this way you're not getting a lot of weird projections underneath. This should stay to the front surfaces a lot better. Okie dokie. Did that work? And you can see now, this is no longer soft. And you have a shell. Does that make sense?
Yes, very cool.
Good. Yeah, this is where whenever you're dragging things through to get rid of, when you're trying to get rid of your undercuts and stuff, that can be really messy. It can be really messy remeshes. You can have a lot of noise in those parts. So I tend to try to get rid of it quick. And then if you just keep having problems, just redynamesh and project to your original model. And that's why you want to duplicate before you ever start doing these. Right?
Very cool.
Very cool.
If I have a chance, I have one more question.
Of course.
When I will do this mesh, the leaves will intersect with the base of the pendant. And should I work on this intersection?
You mean down here?
Yes. And to work on the edges that stick out of the circle.
Well, the first thing I would, just because the ape likes symmetry, I would think about getting it a little bit more where these, instead of it being like this where it's completely off, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would probably get it more like that, just because, there's a symmetry to it that is appealing, right? And then as far as working with the leaves, if you mean just coming back here and knocking the edges off and bringing them up a little, like I would come in and do something like this, just so those are not sharp edges on the back side, right?
Mm-hmm. So I shouldn't try to get the style of the real leaf there.
No, I mean, I think that you might want to, because of how I flattened this out, you might want to come back in and just put, obviously with your radial on, and just quickly put a touch of the detail back in, just where you're getting sort of the framing. But no, I wouldn't bother coming back in and really trying to get the leaf stuff to it. I mean, you can, right? It's not going to hurt you if you do it, but I tend to make the backs, I don't want them necessarily to be as good at the front, but I want them to look like they were well conceived, if that makes sense. Like it's better for the backs to be a little more simple. Yes, free project from the original. You see how rad this is? I am so going to do a hand tutorial on you guys. Okay.
It will never happen.
Oh no, it's so going to happen. It really is. I'm going to shock you guys. I'm going to pull out Leonardo hands and going to make everyone cry and have inferiority complexes. I'll scar you. No. Right on. But do you see what I mean? How it just feels a little bit more composed when it's symmetrical. If you really want it to be kind of herky-jerky and feel uncomfortable, then break the symmetry dramatically.
But not this time, yes.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I mean, with your rotations and stuff, it seems. I think it would be an odd choice. Let's put it
Okay.
All right.
And the depth of the entire piece, if I measure from the nose of the head to the end, is up to 2 centimeters now. Isn't this too much?
Yeah, that's a little thick. I mean, here, what do we have? Well, Z, you're only at 6 mil. 6.4. Or 5.4.
It's leaves, no?
Hmm?
It's not the entire piece. If,
Oh, it's just the leaf.
yes.
That's supposed to give me everything. What are you doing? Let's merge down. Down. That's 8 mil. I mean, you can. $13 million. Yeah, 5.5 mil there. You know, and you can. I would literally just squish it a little. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's 4 mil. And then if you. You know, if you make your face more round, and that kicks you back up to like 8 mil or whatever, it's like that's only 2 mil. And you can see that if that center part is like even 10 mil, who cares as long as most of it isn't, you know? And that's going to cut your metal weight dramatically, right? That's like it. That's 1922. Right? 37.44. So, you know, we've almost doubled the price in metal. So, you know, just flattening everything down to saves you a ton of money because that was 1932 or whatever, and now that's 37.40. So that's a good just volume check, right? You're like, well, you know, is that really what I wanted to do? Yeah, see, we're at $20. So we just cut $14 out of that just by flattening stuff. Right?
Okay, it's clear now. So it will be better to get that hot edge around the head there, yes.
Yeah, I think so. It's just safer. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got it. I will rework that all things.
Right now.
Hope it will get better.
Oh no, it looks good. I mean, you're real close. It's just little things. It's just little.
Thank you very much.
Of course. I'm already getting mitten harassed. It never fails. Henry, bastard. Okay. So let's see. Who do we have next? I think we have our What's this? Right. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, what he said. Okay. See? Getting scans of classic sculpture is awesome. It actually really helps you with fabric. All right. Are you here? All right. Well, we're not here, so let us look at our body. I think our issue still... Oh, that's not bad. I think that your posture's I think your legs are a little low. Better. Your navel isn't going to sit that. So your hips have collapsed a little. So I think that your torso is reading a little low. You're really long. Maybe because your lower legs comparatively. Right? If you go from the knee to the, that's going to, these are a little bit more equal in size. I think your torso is a touch long because of it. And now, robe. Yeah, see, because right here, this is just looking like it's falling off the front. If we have this, where am I? Give me a minute. This is going to.
Hello, Thomas.
Hello, how we doing? Can you hear me? Right? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Basically, it looks like when you look down and talk, the mic cuts out. So I think the mic has to be a bit lower.
I see how it is. How's that? Is that better? A little better?
We'll see. We'll see. It only cuts out when you're actually looking down, working, and then start talking.
Is that any better? While I'm looking down? Anyone? Libberlabber,
Yeah.
flim, flam, for flim,
Seems fine to me.
slimmidin. Yeah, that's better.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
I just had to turn the stream back on so I could hear you.
Cool.
All right, I'll leave you to it. Enjoy.
Right on. No, it's all good. Thank you very much. Okay, good. I'm glad it does. So basically what you did is you stretched your legs down to meet the ground. So you blew out his body a little. And when you did you put his, hold on, let's look at what's going on here. I think the body, yeah. So the other thing you've done is you've pushed, when you were doing it, you moved this stuff around and his head is way out of whack with his shoulders, and that's why it looks like his torso is so long. Because the shoulders would be kind of up here, right? So I think you need to go back and just reevaluate where the body is, because in your moving and posing and stuff, you shuffled him around to the point that he was looking really funny. Right, because I mean, look at where his shoulder line is here. Right? Shoulders are kind of doing that. So you just gave him these draping, slopey shoulders. And I think his hands are a little... It seems like it's a little off kilter. Yeah, it feels... The other thing is, like when we make a fist, our fingers touch. Because right now you have him, whereas fist is sort of... Like I can barely do it, right? Like there's not space in between the fingers. Yeah, I can't... This finger bends in, right? You know, it's not like they're not 90 degrees to one another. The fingers actually kind of roll together. So if he's holding something, even if he's holding something where, you know, it's a loose hold, you're not... See, this is loose, but you don't have a full finger width in there. Right? That looks unnatural. So I would say get your fists... I think you just need to consolidate it a little. A little too square. Change my focal. Right, because the hand is sort of a triangle that goes up to the wrist. It's not just a big block out. And then if that's there, this arm has to... Arm has to do that. And such, which makes the wrist... Because the wrist is actually about there. Yeah, I think that your problems with your fabric are coming in that you're having issues with where your body pose is. So I would kind of go back to, this was what, Nick's human average. I would come back in with Nick's human average and try to match up to the points where you're at, repose it, because I think you've pushed this around a little and you've lost some important key landmarks in the anatomy. And that's what's making him look a little bizarro. And that's going to help you get like where these things are, where your robe positioning is. And if you look, like, let's look at this as a fabric reference, right? You can see that it's points and then everything's going off of the point. So you can see here how this is gathering up and over the shoulder, and that is where that pinching is, right? And you sort of have it here, but it's going to be a little bit more dramatic than that. And because this seems to be a pretty loose robe, right? So gonna have that come, and the waist is going to have the rollover wrinkle. So this isn't going to be smooth here. This is a major rollover, because I'm assuming there's a waistline of some sort in this. So when you sit, just when it sits, this meat material is going to come from here, and it's going to gather here and here, and that's how you get those intersections there. It's never going to drape past the waist, right? Because you're bending at the waist. This is going to be one series of folds, two series of folds, however these are working out. And then these are going to be pretty tight because he's sitting on the robe, right? You can maybe pull this out a little, but to get that, it's not like a mini skirt, right? This is a huge robe. So you probably go like this and sit down. So you get a little wrinkle right here, but I doubt it's going to be that big. And then this is going to be your major dividing point. These are going to be coming in here. These will be doing something in that vein. Right, that's how that wrinkle transition is going to happen. And these are going to be that. And then you'll get your crossover here where it's bagging up over the legs, right? So I think that what's going to be real important is for you to get the body in the right place before your wrinkles are really going to look right. And I think that this is a really good wrinkle reference. Right, you can see that you have the thin point, and then that's that one band of wrinkles. That's the second band of wrinkles. This is the armpit, right? You're bunching up in the armpit, and that's the other band. So all of this works in like series of triangles. And that's how it's coming up over the shoulder. You have less material here, so you're getting pinches in it. Like, it's not just one drape, right? You know, there has to be wrinkles in here because that material is pinching and folding. So I would say look at some more sculptures like this. Like, here's another really prime example. This is sort of what's going to be happening at the waist, right? Because it's pinching and folding over. And look at a few other sculptures like this and see if you can find one that's seated, and look at how those wrinkles, see how these have weight and the fabric breaks and comes back to the belt line. Wait, the fabric breaks and comes up back to where it's held. So I would say just do a little bit more looking at this. Get your anatomy reference correct. So go back to the original model and repose it, and don't let it get all squirrely. You can also do it with Z-spheres. And as long as you're moving it at the joint, not at the joint, but along the arm, your limbs won't change distance. And that'll become a nice way for you to keep control over your anatomy, if that makes sense. But I mean, it's definitely getting there. I think that just because your anatomy's squirrely, it's throwing other stuff off, and that's and you're trying to work back to something that's messed up anatomy. And those are your anchor points. So that's what's screwing you up, I think. All right. He's definitely getting there. His lips seem a little flat. I'm sure it's just the pictures. I'm thinking that he's a little deeper in the face. Get a couple photo references again and look. Right. I mean, this line looks good. Yeah, see, he just looks a little flat there. I think I would bet actually this is just a touch farther back. That'd be my guess. Alrighty. Approach some of that and then let's look at what you got. I think redefining the base anatomy is going to help you a lot, though. Okie dokie. We now have... Who was this? It's not written here. Creepy yellow-eyed kid. There we go. I like where you're going with it. Your hair block is pretty good. It's nice. Because you're getting your rhythms. You're not getting a lot of weird crossover. And this is a good place to start from. But just as far as a loose throw out of hair, it has good rhythm. The expression is nice. Is there a reference image? Oh, excuse me. I think that with the puffiness of his face, this seems a little hollowed out in here, but you know, once again, faces are faces, who knows? I would also come in, this is where SK Twist works really well, is by throwing twists down, you're kind of getting a ridge here, and I would do it on both sides. And that lifts that up off the surface, and it gives it keeps it, like I said, up off the surface, and it makes it a little bit more poppy. Yeah, I'm a SK Twist fan. The other thing I would seriously consider is putting that extra pupil reference in, because what it does, it gives a little bit more directionality, and it puts the pupils in as opposed to just a big black. Because if you print this out and that's a scoop, it's just going to be one huge black pupil sort of feel. And I find that by throwing, I tend to use the little C shape, right? But it allows you to really dictate where that eye's looking, right? Because you have this, but if we do it here, let's make this smaller. You put it way up here. It's too big. Smaller, stronger. You put it way up and off to the side. You know, he's kind of looking at us over here now, right? The directionality is up and over, where if you do it where... dead center. He's sort of looking at a different place. If you put it way right. And it's just an extra place for that reflectivity to happen. I think it's a slightly more successful eye sculpt than just leaving them plain. I think leaving them plain gives you weird, creepy, no-looking, staring off into space eyes. But that's just my personal opinion. It just gives you a little bit more life or focus on the object, right? But the brows look great. The face is good. Just feel that this got a little pinched when you were posing it. Because he has a pudgy face, I just think that there'd probably be a little more weight in here. And I mean, not a lot. Because I don't think that body fat's necessarily just going to disappear. But like I said, faces are funny. People are different. If you have a photo reference, you know. It looks great. It looks really good. Yeah. Everybody here? Anybody have any questions? We're just moving along. All right, so let me load these others that we downloaded just now. Okay. Abdul, would you mind saving this as a ZTL, not a ZPR? Can you re-upload that as a ZTL? ZPRs kill me. Mm. Yeah. I think you're good. I think you're, as far as your, I mean, I'm assuming this is sort of at a block up stage, or is the figure going to be this soft in form? Are you here? Didn't you say you uploaded your monster? You can always join the Discord if you want to talk. We have the streaming channel and the Discord thing open for a voice channel. Yeah, that one. So this is sort of at a block up stage, or is this the level of detail that you're shooting for in the project? Do I have a big leg? Oh, okay. Well then, yeah, it's looking great. I would say that, you know, my inclination is always to get things crisp and sharp, and that's just what's going on in my head. But you've actually reached a very consistent level here. and that's good. I think that right here, just be a little careful about coming back in and making sure that what's over is over and what's under is under, because right now you're breaking your surface right here, right here, right there. And I feel like that's supposed to be like a plate on the back, and this is supposed to go under it. Just be really careful about these dents, because it tells a different story of what's happening with those surfaces. I tend to use SK cloth fill and come back in and just fill these up. And you can see just by doing that, we now have these plates sitting on top of the surface as opposed to denting into the surface. This is where I use SK twist a lot, because that's just going to give me that little bright edge, which tells me that that is going under and over that. The other way to accentuate that, if you want to, is just using slide instead of something that's cutting down and in. Define these edges just by pushing that up and under, and you can see that that really defines something as sitting on top of, and that prevents, sliding also prevents those dents from happening, so it doesn't look like it's cutting into the surface. So yeah, and you know, same thing, any place you have little overlaps, you know, I would just use slide and just make sure that everybody's kind of where you want it. And this way you're not really sharpening your detail up too dramatically, right? You're still at this level, but with slide, you can really define where those things go, and you're not actually futzing with your detail level too much. Excuse me. Right. But yeah, this is, you know, your final level of where you're trying to get to it. I think that, you know, the face and everything's at a very similar detail form level. I would be careful. I would come back in and just make sure that these are, you know, going up and under, only because you don't want it to get muddy. Even if you have soft detail levels where you're not getting everything super crisp and sharp, make sure that your transitions, the things that are going over and the things that are going under, are clear. Because even at a soft detail level, you don't want it to get muddy by going, oh, you know, it just sort of disappeared. So I would just make sure these transition points between these hard surfaces are a little more defined so you don't lose them. And don't cut into the surface here, because it'll, you know, it breaks that idea of that sitting on top of it, because the second it's cutting in, you've broke this plane and it's no longer a solid, if that makes sense. But all in all, he looks great. I mean, your anatomy's fun, your details are fun, everything's viable. Yeah. Thanks. That's lovely, by the way. Jesus. Ay, ay, ay. All right. Do you have any questions about that? Does that make sense? I agree. It does. It looks wonderful. I mean, your proportions and your anatomy is fun. Just don't let things get muddy, right? Don't break surfaces. It's sort of like with movies. It's like, you know, you can do anything, but you can't break the rules of the universe, right? So this is sci-fi anatomy. You can do whatever you want, but you can't break the rules of anatomy, right? In the sense of, oh, well, I have a solid surface. Oh, there's a big dent in it, and then expect it to feel solid, you know? Okay. Did we get... No. Abdul, if you can upload your model as a ZTL, well, I guess I can open it as a ZPR because that was the last one that we have here. Hmm. Oh, come on. Oh, we have a roadblock. All right. Red wax. Ugh. Okay. So using your cracks, you're using your cracks in different scales, right? And that's cool. Um, it like your dents and stuff make it feel a little soft, like instead of it cracking or being formed, that it's been pushed in, right? Some of this stuff just looks a little soft for something that's, you know, poured cement. Let's look at your reference again here. See how these aren't really, they're not changing the structure. It's more like layers that have been chipped off. You might want to think about the crumple brush. Like some of this is pretty good. But this is where layer brushes work very well. And crumple works really well. Because see, some of this stuff, it doesn't feel like it's one flat surface that's been degraded. It feels like it's soft, right? No, no, no. This actually started as jewelry. It just so happens that um, people want everything critiqued, and I'll critique anything, so it's not a big deal. But no, you can, like right now we are critiquing a roadblock, so no, feel free to load up anything you want. But see, even here, see how it feels. It doesn't feel like it's one surface that's been degraded. You have all these pushes and stomps in here. Let's duplicate this. So what I'm going to do is let's flatten this. Oh, is this the new? Okay, here. Let's actually start with you. So you have this. What I would probably do is come in with clay tubes, and I am just going to do a very light, just cross texture, because I want crumple to have something to work on. Mm-hmm. And then what I'm probably would do is come in. Where's crumple, crumple, crumple? Crumple. Take this, hold down Control, make this my history state, so we always have something to go back to. And what I like about crumple is it sort of gives you this extra thing. You can also rotate it and get it to be kind of weird. And I'm being very loose with this, right? I would suggest doing it a little bit more calmly than I've just done. The other thing, hold on. If I'm going to do it, let's do it instead of me saying it could be done like this. Let's get rid of this line. All right. Now I'm going to come back with clay tubes. Just give myself a little texture. Crumple. Crumple. Thing about crumple is you can get nice long strokes and you'll sort of get this like texture. We're going to go the other direction and get a little texture. And you can make it smaller by just doing smaller strokes. You can see you can do big long strokes. Now, it reacts with surface textures. So since this is pretty flat, I've just gotten a rhythm in here, right? Now we're going to take cascade trim and just smooth some of this out. And now, like, okay, so I'm going to have the crack come. Oh, I have. One second. So that's not okay. Because it just wants me to do crumple at a later point. Fairly clean. Interesting. Okay. So, you know, you have that pit that's broken out. I'm going to take layer first. And I'm going to start, make this sub. And I'm going to start cutting back into my form. You can do this with a slightly larger brush, but and right, so I'm dropping back and knocking those layers in. And you can see I'm getting the same corner push back in, but it doesn't look like it's been pushed in. It looks like it's been shipped away. Yeah, ZTLs, and if you want reference images, that's fine. And then coming back in, you know, I think you were using track alphas, but I'm just quickly. And then grab my layer. You can add layer, cut back into the SK trim, knock some back in the rougher spot. Grab crumple. You can knock out these edges a little. Come back with SK trim polish and clean that up some. You can see that it's starting to look like things that are dropping back as opposed to big dents or pushes in. And, you know, you can have something that chips it out, right? But you still want to think of that as layers that have been knocked back, not necessarily just a dent in, because very rarely are you going to see cement just scoop out, right? You're going to have, this is where trim front can come in handy. You know, you can get them to be more like knocked out steps instead of pushed in. Give it some rough texture. SK trim polish to flatten some of that back in. And then you can use noise. To help punch it. But rarely is it going to be just like these pushed in forms. So think about it as like taking steps out of it as opposed to making it push and in. But otherwise, I mean, it feels good. Like you have like good stuff. You're just, I don't think you're going to wind up with things like this because it just makes it look like it's pushed in and come out. Hey, hey, hey. How's everyone doing out there? Oh, for everyone on YouTube, hit subscribe and hit like. It's really helpful for our algorithms. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions, post them in the comment section of YouTube, and I or someone who's informed about the question will answer your questions as well. So hit subscribe, hit like. What's the bell icon? I don't even know what the bell icon is. And don't forget the bell icon. I don't even know. Oh, yeah. And if you want to get notified when we're on, hit the bell icon because it'll remind you. See, Rat? Me and my social media savvy. I'm pretty sad. Let's come back here. And you know, by coming in and crisping some of these edges up, these can start to look like it's not so fluid or lumpy, right? And just make sure your texture is to scale with the object, right? Let's look at your reference material again. You know, the scrapes and such. But you see what I'm saying? Where it's much more been chipped out. These are layers. They're not scoops. I think you're close, though. I think if you just play with that idea of layers and not a soft, mushy, I think you just lost your substructure. It's a little mushy. You are the substitute for Harry. Henry. Jesus. Gotta be that kind of day. I know. It's tragic. Upload ZTLs, not ZPRs. Let's look. Is there any new thing? Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Okay. First things first, your arms are disjointed. So very rarely are you ever going to see space in the armpit, because this muscle is actually coming back up in here and connecting, right? So your bicep comes up and under. Mm-hmm. And then your delt is here, your pec is there. It sort of makes this like little threefold thing going on. And that actually brings the shoulder up and in. Right? Your shoulder, like your body, your arm isn't disassociated from the torso. Let us find our little human anatomy thingy mabob. Come on. Come on, Pokey. Give me my arm. That's not very helpful. I show this all the time. Okay, well, this will do it. You can see that the bicep actually comes up and under the shoulder, right? Because it's attaching up inside. And then the pec is coming over. Where is the whole... I really just have to show the whole body? So you see here, even in no meat, no fat, just muscle, you don't really see up into the armpit because the pec comes over. Right? The delt comes over the pec goes over the bicep comes up in here and attaches, right? So let's hide the pec real quick. Let's hide this deltoid. Right, so you can see that it comes over and into the torso. So your shoulder isn't just floating out here in space. And then you also have your lat coming over, and that is filling up the armpit, right? So this is usually what's hiding the armpit up in here. So what you see of the armpit is actually much farther down from the joint. So you want to ZBrush. Right, see how, and I've even pushed that in, right? I mean, go back to where you were. See how the shoulder blade is out here? So if you think about it, what's happening here is your clavicle has to come all the way back out here because your shoulder bone is like here. Your rib cage is right here. So, you know, your scapula is over here, but see how much distance there is here? That's not there. So your shoulder is actually sitting up in here, right? Because it's seating with the clavicle. And you see how that brings everything out. So the bicep is coming up, connecting here. Your pec is crossing over that and kind of connecting over there. And then your delt is coming over. So you have this sort of threefold triangle thing going on in the armpit. And so that allows your arm, your shoulder to actually come up in place, right? Because your deltoid's actually up here. And that's why you're having issue resolving that muscle, because that muscle's only like there. If that makes any sense. So just pay attention to where, because see even here, see how far out this is? And that would put your scapula, right? You have your scapula here, you have your shoulder joint there. So all this needs to come in. Right? I don't think it's expensive. I think it's like $19, $20. Hold on, let's look. The company called again, Human Atlas. Henry has all the connections that in his stream deck. My stream deck isn't reprogrammed yet. I think it's visible body. So visiblebody.com and oh, it's now subscription. You're not giving me you can download it for $24 on your phone, and then you can open that in apps. And then you can get they have a like an education bundle that WebSuite. So yeah, it's $11.88. There's a 50% off sale right now. $11.88 for 1 year, and then it's $23 a year after that. And you get the Human Anatomy Atlas, you get the muscle pack, the skeleton pack, and then the physiology pack, I think. And yeah, it's really good. I have this, but I bought it years ago, so but $11.88 a year for a great anatomy reference. It's really, that's good to know. It's worth it. Yeah. So if you look at the web suite, you get all of them. And what's really cool about it is that you can actually, it has, because it really is an education thing. So you can go through and it has tests. So it'll go through and ask you what this muscle is and what that muscle is. So if you really want to learn your muscles, it's a really good way to do it. There's yeah, quizzes. And so you can go through and just get quizzed on them. Tours, they talk about all kinds of stuff. You can create tours. Note cards if you're trying to take notes on stuff, but like it'll go through and it'll ask about each one of the things, you know. So if you want to do muscular stuff, they have, you know, bone and muscular quizzes. And then the muscle one also has very detailed muscle quizzes. So it's a really, I like the system a lot. It's good stuff. So yeah, I think that no, that's by the year. It used, like I bought it years ago before they had the membership thing, so I've had it. I haven't paid for an upgrade or anything. They just gave me the upgrade, so yeah. But I mean, I would pay $28 a year for it. It's well worth it. Because you can make the muscles disappear and really look at what's going on. And in the muscular one, right, that's just the anatomy one. In the muscular thing, it goes through and it shows you the insertion, the origin, so you can really see where everything connects and how they pull and the functions. I find them to be super good. Okay. So honestly, I think the only issue with your model right now is that your arms are disattached. So come in and figure out this intersection. And let's divide this up so you have a little. So this is coming up into the armpit first. We're just going to move this out a little. So we'll do it in layers. And that's never good. You don't want ants anywhere around your electronics. So your bicep is actually up in here. Your pec then comes over on top. And then your deltoid kind of comes over that as such. And then your lat is what fills that in. So almost never, I mean, there are cases of anorexics and things like that, or extreme anorexics, never are you going to see something like this where joints, like where bodies meet, right? You're always going to wind up with this muscle and this fat hitting this muscle and this fat tissue. And so you never wind up with these things where you see the scoops, right? And you can see from here, right, you're going to get that sort of little crossover intersection by and now what does that do? That pulls all this in and up. Mm-hmm. Your class. And see how that sits a little bit better on the torso. No, you can't. Wouldn't it be? Well, I mean, if you're telling me that, see, you can distort the anatomy all you want, right? You can put those bone structures wherever you want, but it still sort of has to function as a machine, right? So if I'm not saying that as an, but I mean, this obviously isn't very alien anatomy, right? I mean, this is pretty human anatomy. It's there. So if you're going to be close to human anatomy, be on, because otherwise your brain's going to look at it and go, well, why are the shoulders detached? Right. So let's say that you want the shoulders out here and you want these to hang, right? Right. This is our new shape. Okay. Well, that's fine. But, you know, it's still, it has elbows and joints, so it wants to do this, right? So how is it going to do that if that muscle goes there? If you do that, right, to get the arm to come back down or to get the arm to come back down, those muscles have to be attached somewhere to get it to function. So if you're going to do that, you know, you're probably going to need to do something like that, because if you're using, you know, there has to be, if you're using some standard anatomy, the muscle has to work right, or it doesn't make sense as a machine. So it needs those muscles or whatever it is to be able to control. Now, if it's a squid or if it's, you know, something in that, a snake, that's a different kind of anatomy. But this isn't set up like that. This is set up to have arms. You know, this is a bipolar creature. So, you know, it has two shoulders. It has one joint in the elbow and the arm. So you're dealing with something that, you know, is still pretty human, not really alien. But if you are doing it, you need to figure out, okay, so, you know, the deltoids are what are going to raise the arm. So that's raising it. But what's going to induct it? You know, what's going to make it do this? Well, what's the bicep doing? Well, the bicep's doing this. And, you know, pulling here, it's pulling down. What are the muscles? What are they doing? Like, why is it attaching where it is? And so you have to, if you're doing something that's completely alien anatomy, you need to figure out how the machine works. If that makes any sense. Yeah, yeah. So I think that the main issue at this point is just figuring out that shoulder joint. So it's not just free floating. So it's actually attaching to the torso. Because the other stuff is I mean, it looks fine. You know, you're getting there. You know, you obviously haven't sat there and sculpted on too much, so it's not. But you know that. I just think you need to bring that shoulder up over the rib cage and get this little transition a little better. But other than that, look at them. No, this is an open critique session. If you want to upload anything, if you look right below the screen here, it says submit files for review at ZBRU SHTW right here. This link. That link. And you can upload anything. Hey, Sean, how's it going? Right? So yeah, I think that that's the only thing you need to work on at this point. Because, I mean, you're starting to develop an interesting rhythm down here that we can see happening. But you kept with human arms, try to get them actually attached to the torso instead of out there floating. Good. Anybody have any other models? If not, does anyone have any questions? I'd be happy to go over anything with anyone. Mm-hmm. Anyone? Anything? I mean, I can just start sculpting if that is something as well. Actually, the Vegas went great. It was interesting because we got a lot of really positive feedback, but obviously people who are selling and or using other software are completely lying about what Matrix or what ZBrush does. Anything besides. So we handed out over 100 cards with the class outline on it. And we only handed them to people who actually showed interest. We didn't print that many because we just didn't think there was going to be that much business, you know, because it was supposedly a fairly slow show. It was great. I mean, from opening to closing, I had someone sitting with us explaining ZBrush. Because there's a lot of interest in it. There's a lot of misinformation about what its capacity. You know, they're like, oh, well, you just can't do like normal jewelry. It's only sculptural. It's like, well, you know, it's like you can do anything. So it was interesting. All right. So then with the question, what was the part around the armpits? What do you mean? Can you clarify that? I'd be happy to answer it. Yeah, no, it was pretty exciting. And then I got yanked to LA for almost 2 weeks to do some work. So all you do is take your ZTL and this link right here above you, if you look, oh yeah, there it is. You just click that and upload a file. No, I've never worked for Chrome Hearts. They have a really small production and design unit. Yeah, I've done stuff like Chrome Hearts, or big Gothic lines, but no, I've never worked for Chrome. It had something to do back being round. Oh, you mean the lat? The latissimus dorsi? ZTL is just right here out of your tool file, save as, and that'll save it as a ZTL, not a ZPR. Oh. So the lat is under the, so the scapula sort of sits right here. And then the lat comes up and under this whole section. It's actually a big muscle. Okay. See, it's this whole muscle right here. This is your lat. But it really bulks. The muscle bulks, like right in here. Like, you see bodybuilders, and this is just like a half round, or like swimmers have huge lats, right? Latissimus dorsi. Whose workshop? You mean Chrome Hearts? Well, we were the place that makes Chrome Hearts jewelry is in downtown, so we talked to them about production stuff, but not really with Chrome Hearts. Well, I'll tell you. I mean, like I said, I haven't used Matrix in probably 8 years, if not longer. I just, as soon as we got ZModeler, I don't make any of my base models in anything other than ZBrush. ZBrush is the only program I use. Well, I mean, for mechanical stuff, sometimes I'll use Fusion 360 to generate like a collection of, M8 bolts. Like I'll do that in Fusion, because you can literally just download catalogs of bolts and nuts and things like that. Anybody have any other models they want to upload? Oh, there we go. Doctor Strange. I'm a big Doctor Strange. When I was a kid, I read the comic a lot. Cumberbatch is a perfect Doctor Strange. I think they did a great casting job on it. Nice. Yeah, but oh, I see. You just he has such a long, skinny face, doesn't he? I loved him. I thought he was a great Sherlock Holmes too. He's sort of that Aspergery, you know. um, well, what kind of chain links? I have entire videos on how to make chain links in ZBrush. In fact, it's one that I'm working on this week. Chain link videos and in our on our website, ZBrush Jewelry Workshops. We have a course. It's more than a course. It's really sort of education platform because we just keep making more and more and more videos. But yeah, I mean, if you have a specific question about chain links, I'd be happy to answer it. Let's look at what we got here. Is this space that? See if we can find a profile. Are you trying to create more of the cartoon character, or are you trying to do photorealistic guy here? Come on, give me a profile. Yeah, I didn't. I think his nose is a little pointy. If we're looking here, I think your nose is just a little. Let's go see. See how out and pointy your nose is? He has a slightly more squared off nose. Ooh. Come on. Let us import. I usually start from a standard size. Under normal circumstances, I'll start with like an 8 or a 9. Like for a women's ring, I'd usually start in the 7 to 8 range. Men's ring, 9 to 11 range. Because starting in the middle sort of gives you a better scalability, makes it easier to scale it. Okay, so let us pull that. What is a JFIF? Oh, well, let's see if we can. So we turn on our floor. We come in. We go draw. We come down here, left, right. We're going to take map 1. We're going to import. We're going to go to picture. The JF. So what we're going to do. Yeah. Where? And I am just screen because they have it as some weirdo format. Okay. Back to ZBrush. Try this again. Draw. Map 1, import. And that is going to be in documents. Snag it. Slide. Yep. See where it is. Okay. I usually try to start with the eye. Okay. Okay. Fairly close. So I'm just going to merge all this together real quick. Because when I block, if I were to block this up, I would have had this image for the block up, if that makes sense. So we're gonna go draw. Right, you can start to see. We're going to change our material to skin shade so you can actually see what's going on here. You can see the mouth is at a slightly different angle. Where's the ear? Where's the eye? Here, I'm just going to move the model to it because, oh, we can't use Gizmo project. I'm just going to move. And so you can see his eye here. We're going to pull this down, push that out so we see that. I'm going to come back in, come out past, go back into And right, I'm obviously not being super careful here because, like I said, normally I would have done this in the opposite direction and blocked up to the image. But you can see how his nose wasn't that pointy. It sort of has like a little square tip to it. And you can see that mouth. And so you can see that here, getting the depth, you're going to, and I wasn't pulling all the way through, if that makes any sense. I was just moving the outside edges, so he got obviously a little bit more wrinkle. But you see, he sort of has that more button nose sort of thing that he actually has. And I stretched all this out, but you know, I've just stored at the model a little bit more than would have if we had started doing this with the block of it. And I would say that he's gotten a little wider. He's filled out some his jawline now, because if you look at you see what I mean? See how he got a little bit more meat in his chin than he did. The beard actually helped shape that form, I guess, actually, because he's still a weird sort of praying mantis head. That weird little triangular. So I think that what I would probably do is get a good profile and get a good foreground again that's really straight. Bring it in, use draw, and tune up your lines, because just little subtle things like having a square nose as opposed to a pointy nose. The second you rock it off a front, it's a very dramatic difference. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mac, I assume, answered that question. Hello, Anak. All right. So did that help with that? Does that make sense? Do you have any other questions about that? Because I would say let's hide. Yeah, as you can see, as I was dragging things back, we I didn't pull the front of this back. Right, I wasn't actually. I was just doing this, so we moved things around a little much, but I think his cheekbones are actually a little deeper. And I did that one. Square. But you can see from like 3/4, if you look at his nose, it wasn't that pointy. And I think that was the real thing that was noticeable. So I would just get the a good side reference and just make sure that your silhouette matches. Because I mean, this is real good. You know, it's real close. It's just little subtle things. You know, because you can see he has that sort of button that you kind of were. And I changed the shape of his eyes when I dragged this back, but so I messed up his eye. Hair looks great. I mean, he looks wonderful. I think your nose was just a little off. Yeah, I mean, it's real close. You know, there wasn't much. I think the eye was a little too far forward. I think that your brow line was a little more square. Your nose is a little more square from the front. I think this fills out just a little more. It just becomes a little bit more full round as opposed to point. Um, and yeah, you know, from the profile, his ear was a little farther back, but that also means that his head's farther back, you know, and that just is getting a true profile and seeing how that is. Because, I mean, if you look at the profile, right, the hair comes down. Real quick to see where the back of his head is. And you can see that you're missing a lot of the back of the head. And once again, I'm just, you know, I'm not going all the way through this. I'm just trying to get the silhouette sorted out. But I mean, see how much head you're kind of missing there. And a lot of that's hair, right? That's stylized hair, but, you know. Jaja? I never work in perspective mode. Perspective mode is nothing. I mean, for rendering, it makes sense, I guess, you know, if you want to force your perspective. But if you want anything to come out of the, like into printing or anything like that, perspective mode is really damaged because it's not a true image, right? So you think things are happening that actually physically are not happening. It's a crap mode to sculpt in. Yeah, never work in perspective. I mean, because, you know, it's like, you know, if you're using a short lens to take the picture, you're dealing with some parallax there anyway. And then you doing it, you're just tripling, you know, the distortion, and it's crap for modeling to come out of the computer. Of course. Yeah, no, I think that it's just, you know, get some good pictures that are just like from straight on, and then make him queen bee praying mantis. But I mean, you're real damn close. I think it's just a few subtle things: angle of his mouth, his nose, and then some thicknesses and sort of placements, and you're going to be good. Okay, Sean, will you upload a ZTL instead of a ZPR? Is that possible? Oh, I do everything. This started out as a jewelry critique, and it just winds up that lots of people want their characters critiqued. I mean, I went to art school. I know design, so I'll critique anything you have. Yeah, I mean, like if you're doing renderings and it's stylized and you have this forced perspective, and I mean, you go in here and pick your angle, right? You know, so yeah, I mean, if it's for a rendering, but even then, you know, that's the camera. It's not modeling. I mean, you know, when we're building sets, we don't look through the camera as we're building sets. You build the set and then you choose the camera to get the angles and the distortions that you're looking for, right? But no one builds a set through a wide angle lens, right? You sculpt it in life. and then you distort it with the camera. And that's what the camera in ZBrush is doing. That's what your perspective is you're just changing focal lengths of your camera. Or you know, millimeter size of your lenses. But no, Fox, I will critique anything you send me, because I'm that kind of guy. Okay. So, while Sean uploads his model, and anybody out there want to have me look at anything, feel free to upload the yeah, you can submit anything at all, and we will critique it. No problem at all. Here's the link. Just make sure there's ZTLs, OBJ, STLs, OBJs, or ZTLs. Z Projects sends me all of your settings and interfaces and stuff like that. And I don't, nothing personal, but I don't really want to do your interface. Mine. It's my world. So while you guys are uploading some stuff, I'm going to run to the restroom real quick. I flew in from LA and got here. And it was like, so potty break. Here, let me type "be right back" just for people who might not. There we go. If anyone asks. Okay. Be right back. Hold on. You have to save it in a different place. One sec, I'll show you. Put my glove back on. So if you're trying to save here, it's not. It's under tool, under your tool menu. If you go save as under tool, it'll save it as a ZTL. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Alrighty. Cool. Well, let's see what you got there. All right. This and All right. So not sure what order, so I'm just gonna. They all came in at 10:23. 22. So Cat Rihanna is first. Let's take a look here. Turn on our floor. Go to draw. Slightly out of scale there. Mm-hmm. So, was this the reference image you were using? Mm-hmm. Silhouette's close, but excuse me. All right. So, who was doing cabbage? So, are you here? Oh, were you the one who said? So, I'm not sure if you imported the image or if you were just trying to match it visually, because there are a few things that are just out of scale. And so I'm not exactly sure how tight you were using the reference image. Like, did you import it in here? Because it looks like we have a few things that are just off. And but her face got really white. Let's go. And if you see where her jawline is here, where look, your ears are out here. She's much thinner in the face here. But material to me. I mean, like the edge of her ears are like right there, right? So I think that when you did your block up and you started going through this, I would have used the reference a little tighter because you got really square in the jaw. And now I just obviously you know, I mangled your line because we didn't have you can see her face was a ton thinner off of that image. And so I think I probably would have worked with it a little. Hey, hey. Yeah, I've been away for a couple weeks. I was in LA working. I will look at it as in any state as long as it's a ZTL. So I think especially when you're doing stuff where you're trying to get photorealism, block up with the model because I mean look at how much I had to push the neck in to get it to kind of be where her silhouette was. And obviously that's not how you want to deal with getting the, you know, the model to where it is. So I don't know what if you were using a different reference in the two images, but they were pretty substantially different. So I would just make sure that your photo reference, you do your block up with your photo reference first and get a really good profile and a really good straight on image and build from that. Because, I mean, let's duplicate this. And let's take this back to the beginning. Come on. You can do it. All right, see how you have this wide jawline here? So, and in the here, let's make this flat color again. Stop it. All right, and so now it's back on. You can see that if we have this where it is, I'm going to take this and I'm going to draw in the jawline. And then that's the ear line. Brown hairline. Here. And that looks. You see what I mean? That's a dramatic difference in the jawline and the width of the face. And the ears are sticking way out compared to that image. I don't know if you were using a different image or if you sort of got a rough idea of where it was and then just sort of, oh, well, this is what ears look like, and you did that. So, you know, because, I mean, her eyes are pretty dead on in this image, you know, scale-wise. And that's what her jawline looks like. So I would say go back and make sure, one, you have a good reference image, and I would get a good side reference image, right, where the eyes, nose, and lips line up in place, and go from there, because I think somehow you got very, very wide because her neck was back in here, right? I mean, here's her neckline here. You see what I mean? So that changes it really dramatically. You see what I mean? I mean, I guess. Did you have perspective? Maybe. Were you sculpting in perspective? To see how that brings all that out and it makes the ears smaller? You might have been sculpting in perspective. If you were, that's your problem. Yeah. It's closer. See, yeah. Sculpt in perspective if you're trying to do, because you inevitably will wind up with a big weird flat face. So I'm guessing that you weren't this far off. I'm guessing you were sculpting in perspective, because that rolls the ears back and stuff. And that's what I'm saying, that's fake, right? That's not actually the physical object. So, yeah, stop sculpting in. Don't sculpt in perspective, because you see what it did? It completely flattened out the face, and it made the ears stand out. Because this is what, if you printed it, it's going to look like this, not like this. This is not the print. This is just the camera lens, right? So basically, you're sculpting to a wide-angle lens, and that's not what the physical object is. So I would always argue, don't sculpt in perspective. I mean, if you're sculpting for a rendering and you sculpt it in perspective and the only thing it's for is for a rendering, yeah, sure. But I mean, like I said, if you sculpt it real, you can use any of your lenses as you would a camera, and you can get that effect. But if you sculpt through perspective, the physical object is never correct. Oh yeah, no, it's very hard to find good references very often. Um, you just have to try, you know, because it's a big damn deal. But I think that's the issue. Yeah, you were sculpting in perspective, and that changed how it sits in the world, right? I mean, just look at the difference in this, right? That's filling her face out, it's bringing it forward, but it's not actually doing that to the model. That's just the image of the model. And if you printed this, it's going to print like this. And look at where her jawline is when it's flat. I mean, see how much her face gets flatter and wider out because you were doing it in perspective, but that's not physically real. So I would go back, readjust the positioning for the model not using perspective, because it perspective has absolutely nothing to do with the physical model. It is looking at the physical model through a camera lens, and that's really not a sound way to construct things. Yeah. Do you have any questions about that? Yeah, Google image searching away is the only just no sadly that's just what everyone's stuck with. Did I download that? Oh yeah. Yeah, I think you're just going to be a lot more successful with your, especially when you're doing portrait stuff. I mean, you can see how much it distorted it. It it's not good. Mm, we already have this. Okay. Oathkeeper. It's very nice. If you have any other questions on that, feel free to ask. I'm not just blowing off. I just think that your real issue is working in perspective, and you'll find it a lot more solid object if you do it otherwise. So now we go, because you had other stuff in here. Oh, no. Oathkeeper, and you have images. All right. Interesting. Your forms are really close. You're doing really well. It looks good. One of the tools I use a lot, and I think that it could probably benefit you if you started using it a little bit more, is SK Twist. SK are it's a Sakaki Karu brush. If you don't know what that is, I would strongly suggest Sakaki Karu workshop. Henry has all these links. What's it's not Patreon, the thing. Can't remember. I'll get a link and post it for you. But SK Twist, when you're in places like this and you have these level transitions, I like SK Twist brushes a lot, because what it allows you to do is come in and let's turn symmetry on. So we have this nice layer transition right here. And you can see how it's sort of rolling that edge. You come back in, what do we, 2 million, I'm going to divide this. It allows me to sort of do a transition, like that's going under and then it comes up and comes under this direction, let's say. And it allows for you to really get layer transitions in. right? If you want something to be over and or under one another, it really gives you good separation because it's rolling that edge. And then once you have that bright edge, I'll come back in with SK Clay Fill and kind of fill it in as such. But what it does is it retains these round edges, and that gives you a brighter edge, and it allows you to separate up and down, right? Like what's in front of one another very easily. And I just find them to be, especially with things like this where you have transitioning surface layers, you know, where things are going behind. Oh. Sort of up and separate that behind it. Play to. It really allows you to control your layering in the sense of what's sitting on top and behind each other. And I just find that, especially in really nice organic forms, if that gets confused, it becomes, well, it's just a messy surface thereafter. And you're not really controlling your overs and unders and what's in front of one another. So I would say that that is a tool set that I would use more if I were you. It really allows you to punch what's over and under. Otherwise, I mean, this looks great. Like here again, see you've cut this and see you drew the lines around it to get it to stand out, but you're actually cutting it in. And so if you come in, and once again using the brush, come in, pop this off the surface. Have that raised surface edge. And come back and smooth that out. Take SK Clay Fill, come in behind this, sort of stop being a baseball bat. Smooth it out. You can come in with SK Clay Fill and fill in that little dent that's there. Fill this up. And now that is riding up and off that surface. It's not diving into the surface. And I think that allows for a lot of separation stuff. It's a Kakikaru. I can't think of his. Oh, did someone? A Gumroad. That's the one. Thank you, Tony. That's the link to the brushes. Yeah. But I think that's going to help you do a little bit more of the separation stuff. And, you know, it's really good when you're coming in and thinking about your forms. I keep changing my brush. Clayfill doesn't do anything for that, right? So instead of thinking as it is cutting grooves in, you can start to, you know, view it this way, and then you can do it that way, and you're creating these layers instead of just cut, right? And that allows you to come in and really define over and under steps, which provide you a much better, it allows you with very little depth to get much more surface separation, which reads deeper and more detailed. That's all. Yeah. So how would I approach, let's take a look at your image again. Boom, 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 boom. Boop. So I would probably take this into Photoshop first because you have a problem here if you're going to use this as an alpha. And what that problem is that you already have reversed depth information to be using it as an alpha. And what I mean by that is this. Let's open Photoshop. Did I miss the alpha? That's oh. Yeah, I do have it here. I think I just opened twice. Yeah. Okay. So you have this set up. So what I would do with this is bring it into Photoshop. Open. Download. Tony. How you doing, my brother? So I would take this. Oh, give me my brush size. Duplicate that. Okay. I'm gonna just in case. And I would come through and get my color swatches and grayscale. So this is your grayscale color swatches right here. And I would come in and decide front to back, right? So, okay, front is her little skirty thing here. And now I would just come back in with this. I would come in with come on. So this skirt piece is first, come in here and then do this because these are your sort of next layer back. Yeah. So because of how this is done, we won't do that. I'm going to take the next color. I'm just going to use brush here because this isn't really set up to do it as such. I'm going to come in and her face is behind that, her breasts, this. Actually, you know what we can do? Do it this way. New. I'm going to do this. %. So we come in. And slowly come in and pick, you know, this layer's next because this is behind that layer. And then we're going to pick the next one down and that's behind that stuff. So this is going to be here. And we're going to do here. And now we're going to pick the next layer down. It's going to be this. And this. Put that one here. And each one of these is tonally one shift off. And when I save this, hopefully with the transition thing here, it's going to show us. Do that. And do we'll go another one down, and that's going to this one. And I do expect you to spend more time and energy making this right. The next one down, and that's going to be this layer. And then next one down is going to be this layer. And just what you're doing is you're creating steps back, right? Next one down is this layer. All of this at that. I'm going to go up one layer, and I'm going to do this wing so it's in front of that last layer. And now we're going to go 2 layers, and we're going to do these guys so they're back and inside there. And now come up here, and we'll do this and that layer. We'll come to and so now that you've done it with grayscale, remember black is all the way back, white is up, and you can see that these black lines are going to be very deep. And so that's where using just straight black and white instead of alpha image, because this is not alpha image, this is just black and white graphic image. Alpha image has depth information, and we're trying to recreate depth information. So we're going to save this as desktop. We're going to do it in picture. Call it. Oh, there you go. Save. Okay. And then when I come back in here, I'm hoping that I had that on transparency. Hopefully that transparency is going to retain the tonal values. But we will go to standard brush. We're going to make that a drag. Turn alpha on. We're going to import pictures. Boom, boom. And symmetry off. Start at the center. And so you can see how these are in different. Let's turn this down. All right, we need to change our focal shift to 0. See how it was fading out towards the outside edges? That's because of the focal length. Now, if you look, you can see that these are at different heights, right? You can see that these are behind, but you also can see that the problem is that black is black, right? And so this is the #1 problem you have with generating forms off a black and white image is that there's no layering information. It just all goes back to black. So when you were in here and composing your Photoshop image, no, keep hitting ZBrush, Photoshop image. See how this is black? That's our problem. So now instead of filling this to 41, I'm going to fill this up. Right, and you can see that I'm barely getting the black to shine through. Yep. Come back in here. Oop. I'm gonna make my opaque. Maybe 88 is. So, where we're barely. Oop. Calm down. Right, and when I'm filling these in, you can see that the gray tone is sort of there. I'm going to do it right here. Okay, so we have a tone in. I'm going to come back up to the brightest one. This is out front. Out front. That's behind. But now look at this one. Yeah. So, this off. And this area here, here. Right, so you can see that now that gray is more in tonal with her. Let's save this again. Save. And now let's this. Come on. And is this a separate piece? No, that's just raised. To be deadly honest, I would do this as a separate part as well, where you have this as a floating part, because right now you're sharing 34 million polys over the entirety of this tool, where if you just have this and it happens to be 20 million polys, that engraving is going to have much more detail, right? Because you have more geometry there. I would then union, remesh by union, get those to be one thing, and then you can decimate from there. But let's give this a shot and see what that toning did. Import pictures. Bum, bum. And now this should be, yeah, here. So you can see that instead of everything going back, by just going step by step with the tones, you see how it's creating a much more usable image. So I would go back to that black and white image, thin those lines up a lot, turn them, go over them tonally so you get this sort of depth information. And now you have it in low step depth information. But why can't you make the background like dark gray to have a little height information? Well, of course you can. I mean, you can come back in and, you know, just lighten up the lines. But if you're doing it through this way, where you can see here that just the gray lines are close to the layers that you're covering it with, it is easier to then come back in and you know, in here we don't really have enough resolution to do this super tight, and that's why I was saying I would do this on a separate piece. So you can have 30 million polys on this, and you can really do a high detail, beautiful part here. Does that make sense? Does this, I mean, obviously I was not being very careful, but you can see the difference in this area here where, this area here, as opposed to this stuff here where it's all just separated out. Cool. Yeah, so just remember that black and white imagery is not alpha imagery, right? And if you're trying to use it as an alpha, remember alpha as depth map. Think of it as a depth map, because people, it's easy to use a black and white image and call it an alpha, and it technically is an alpha. But how we're trying to use alphas are depth maps. So you have to go back in and give it depth information by tone value. You can do that, but then you lose your subdivision levels, right? The second there's different geometry processes on the same mesh, you lose your subdivision levels. And retaining your subdivisions are really important, because what it allows you to do is to work in really high resolution and still be able to use it like a low resolution model. I get a lot of people who are like, well, Tomas, you sculpt in 64 to 100 million subtools, but how do you ever smooth that? Well, if I have a 90 million poly subtool, which I do regularly, I drop it back down because I have my subdivision levels. If you are working on, and that's why I work in quad meshes for the most part. I use Dynamesh as a tool to accomplish things like when I distort my meshes too much, I'll Dynamesh it and then Z-remesh it and things like that. But unless it's really late in the process and I know that it's basically done, I just need some extra resolution, I'll Dynamesh then feasibly. But I almost never work with Dynameshes through the process. I start with really basic quad models, subdivide them up, and that gives me the power to alter and control my geometry. Right? I don't like working on tools that I can't subdivide. And the second you mask this off and only divide it, you can't have subdivision level. Yeah. So is this a Dynamesh? Or is this a quad? No, no. Yeah, this is probably. Maybe? Yeah. Okay, so let's just take this guy. Split hidden. No, it won't split hidden. It's at its lowest resolution. Now to split hidden, split hidden. Doesn't like that at all, does it? Yeah. It's a real drag. The gray screen of weight. Ain't gonna wait for it. Ooh. But did I throw someone's model? Okay, so no, what are you doing? Hmm. Mm-mm-mm. Hmm. I don't think. Okay, let's do that. Okay, try this one more time. Hold on. It all. All. Speaking of chains, those were all the chain projects. Okay, we're here. Ba-ba-ba-ba. You're 2 million, and that's your resolution, right? So I want to control my alpha here. I need to readjust this. So what I'm going to do, come here, split hidden, come back to you, duplicate. So now we have this duplicated. This is symmetrical, right? X and Z. So I'm going to turn that on. So we have X and Z symmetry on. And then I'm going to come over to ZBrush. I'm going to type in 11.2. And 11.2, you can do like 22.4, 25. What I'm trying to do is get it to where as I subdivide back down in half, I will have about 700 polys. I want my base mesh to be 700 polys or under, because what that allows me to do is get within 6 to 8 million poly groups, 6 to 8 million polys in 8 subdivision levels. I want as many subdivision levels as I can. The smaller my beginning model, I can squeak another layer of subdivision levels in there. So that's my goal. So we're going to come here. I'm going to go ZBrush. Turn off adaptive. Boop. And if you have symmetry on, it will ZBrush in symmetry. All right, let's turn our light. So I'm going to come in here and I am going to crease this edge if we can, because I don't want this blade edge to distort too much. So I'm going to come in here, go to the side, roll over my little edge here. I want crease, edge loop complete, and I'm just going to tap that, and now that edge loop is creased. And I think that's the only, I mean, we can do like here, and that'll keep that as an architectural point, if that makes any sense. Is it that one? Actually, let's do it here. There we go. Let's see, it doesn't go to the point here, so let's not do that. Okay. So we're going to go keep creases. No, not keep groups. Keep creases. And now I'm going to go half. And I'm going to Z rematch. And then I'm going to go, see how this is select half? I'm going to Z. Then I'm going to Z. Go Z rematch. There we go. So now I've Z remeshed this down to 520 polygons. Now I'm going to divide it back up. Divide, 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 divide. And so we're at 2 million polys, and I already have 7 subdivision levels. That's a big deal. So right now, I'm going to come back to my original guy here, right? And I'm going to go Control, tap this, and this is now my history state. I'm going to come back down here, project history. And now I'm going to divide this one more time. That sticks me at 8 million polys, 8.5 million polys with 8 subdivision levels. And that's really, really important, right? And you can see that we match the original model, except now I have a lot of subdivision levels. And so that gives me a ton of control over my model. Because let's say we divide this one more time, and let me grab, I'm sure I have some real alpha information here. Let me see. Import picture. Interesting. It's funny what I have on this machine. We just built this machine. Well, I mean, it's been a little while, but I haven't put everything on it. So actually, I don't know that I do have alpha. Okay, so let us do this. Well, actually, these are perfectly good. Example, because these are done in. So just look at this image for a second, right? The flowers are in front. The face and stuff is behind. You can see how it's done in little islands of color that step back. So now, when we come in here, I want to open that. So now this is your, we're going to say this is this, right? So turn symmetry off. All right. See how it's softer on the edges? That's because we have focal shift. We're going to put it on. And you see how it translates out into depth information. This is a noisy image, but you can see how the whites are in front and the grays are back, and you're getting. Let me see if I can find a better, cleaner. But this guy's work works really well for it. No. Aren't you being a pain in the butt? Okay, here we go. Hmm. I'm trying to find one that's not shaded, that's more like steps, so you can see. They actually have programs that will turn just graphic images into depth maps. They're not perfect, but they do. Okay, let me see if we can. All right, aren't you going to be a pain in the butt? Actually, if you have an iPhone, if you take photographs in portrait mode, you then can export those images as this kind of depth map right here. It's kind of cool, but here we'll just use this crappy image. But this crappy image is at least no GIF files. It jerks. What is a GIF file? ZBrush doesn't know what a GIF file is. All right, so let's hope this one's a little cleaner. No, you can sort of see what's going on here, right? You see what I mean by doing steps. Sorry, I have, what's really funny is on the other computer, I have a ton of these images because we were discussing them. And so you can see that this is just a lot more steps, right? So instead of cutting deep lines into it and going all the way to the back, what you're doing is you're creating tonal depth information. Let's just go to one that's actually Did I close those windows out? Oh. CNC. R. Yeah, this is much better example. All right, so you can see that, like here, see how the subtle tone steps are happening. And I would argue that these lines are even a little too dark because they're cutting in. But you can see up here how it's the tonal gradation that's giving you your depth, not the line. Does that make sense? Yeah, without a question, right? Because this way you can control the steps and then you just knock the edges off of it. Now, like I said, there is iPhone. What did I say? Portrait. Right, so the portrait mode has this artificial, it breaks it up into depth information, and that's how you get like blurred backgrounds and stuff. And these are actually pictures out of the iPhone, and you can see that it's giving you really flat depth information. So, and I know that they're trying to make it, you know, better and better. But this guy's work, actually is interesting because he really does break it up much flatter instead of it being. Isn't this exciting? This is a really, really bright one. No, you're not going to give it to me? Okay. Great. Come on. And instead of having complicated, very tonal stuff, his stuff is broken up into layers a little bit more concisely. And I'll show you what I mean. Save image. And if you look him up and think about creating, like if you're creating your still images, and I think he probably discusses the technique in which he makes his. Did I place self? Okay, let's try that again. The JPEG in pictures. Import. Open. Pictures. There it is. But I think that gives you a kind of a clearer idea of what he's doing with those depth maps. Right? And you can see how there's steps. And you can go through and do this in Photoshop, obviously. my thing is to be deadly honest, I would just sculpt this on a flat surface and create an alpha from it. Right. But you can see it sort of has that chiselly and gravy sort of layery thing. And you just come back in and you can selectively, you know, smooth out your weirdness and then use that as a depth guide and just bring in play tubes and just sort of right. But I'm a sculptor. I would just sculpt this. And if I wanted to use it over and over, I would then take an image of my sculpt. Do you know how to do that? So if you do get it once and you have this sculpted and you're super happy with it, sort of zoom it in, come over to alpha, come over to alpha. No, we don't want to do this the clay tubes. Do the standard. Come over to alpha, say grab dock. No, this might be a little large since I'm doing this on a 34 million poly model. And now, back face masking is important when you do these things. See, it just made it the inverse. Wow, how many strokes did I do? Oh, really? I guess I did smooth it out. All right, that's boring. Come on. Come back. Oh my god, okay. But you can see that it took just the sculpted information and created an alpha, right? You see how that's the blade depth and everything. So I tend to actually sculpt and then just use that as my alpha. But like I said, I'm a sculptor. It's mine. And then I have originals that I can use. But if you look him up, I think they show his technique. But also, like I said, you can use your iPhone to do it. So it might be worth just getting your friends out there, do a quick posing thing and just take the iPhone picture. Now you have the depth information. Something to think about. But other than that, it looks great. I mean, I think, you're definitely getting there. Any other questions? Oh, good night, Punchball. 3 hours later. Of course. let us look at, what do I have here? Great. Cool. And this is Sean. Are you here, Sean? Like his little clippy heel things here. This is nice. I'd say here again, you could benefit from SK Twist. Anytime you have these plates or separations, SK Twist just works really nicely. Whoa. Continue your plates over your edges. Plates don't die out. Like mid-range. SK Trim Polish, SK Clay Fill. Clay Fill, negative Clay Fill this way. Clay Fill. Alt Clay Fill. Clay Fill. Alt Clay Fill. And that'll give you that illusion that they're actually going over another. That's one of the biggest things. I mean, I got yelled at one day because somebody was like, "Oh, well, you always say the same things," and it's like, "Oh, yeah, because everyone's doing the same thing." Sorry, my throat's still thrashed from Vegas, talking so much. Also, I tend to use really light strokes just to lay down surface rhythm, right? So you always get just a little bit of texture going on there. And, you know, by stroking in different directions, you can really get dramatic differences in all your, excuse me, my allergies have been a sheesh. Right, so I think that punching those layers by twisting that edge, and then, you know, you can really give it just a lot more character, even just with a little bit of texture. Make sure the things that are under, and the things that are over are over. But you see, by cutting it in right here, you're not really selling that these are plates going over and under. Where if we come in, And by paying attention to what's going on here, because this is coming up and in, and that's over and in, over and in. You know, now these plates are distinctly sitting on top and in turn under one another. Cage polish. Play fill. Right, see how that really looks like plates now as opposed to digging it in. And I think that's really in here. Instead of using a cutting tool, I would just use twist when you're kind of, what is going on? There's something in them. That's weird. Is that my stylus misbehaving? Mm-hmm. My allergies all freaking out. Right, you can see that it sort of looks like plates are sitting against each other as opposed to just cutting things in. So I'll often, when I'm like trying to develop forms, see that? What is that about? Style? You see what I mean? Like, instead of it coming in and just doing these divisions, you're creating layers when you're working it out that way. And I think it creates really nice, subtle surface stuff. Surface stuff is a very technical word. And then using textures, like I said, and going in different directions, it lets you define the rhythm of your surfaces nicely. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah, there's so many new tools. It's awesome. It was a great upgrade. And I think your capacity to make really cool things is nice. Righto, righto. Any questions about that? Hey, Jeff, how we doing? Good, good. My allergies are acting wacky, but feel a little beat up. Talking in Vegas for a week and then yabbering in LA for 2 weeks, and throat is just thrashed. Okay. Are there any questions? Anything anybody wants to know? Do you have any questions about this one? Oh, I have a ever running drama with my allergies. One day I need to go to an allergist and actually get medication for it, because I don't think I've breathed clearly in like 2 years. It's just, it's been rough. Yeah. Any questions? Anything? Henry is, he had a work emergency thing, so he's been busy. He's a busy. Hurrah. Hello? Someone came in the room. I don't know. Okay. Um, if there aren't any more questions or stuff, I might call it an early evening and get some sleep. If anyone has anything, I'm definitely here, but if not, I traveled all day today to get back from Los Angeles, so. Oh, he's good. Yeah, no, it's just the horror show thereof. All right, well, if that's it, guys, I'm going to kind of call this early because I was traveling all day and my allergies are dying. Oh, hello, Anish. How are we doing? I'll definitely be back next Monday, and we'll be prepped, and we'll do a longer night. Normally we go to 1 or 2, but it seems like we've died down some, and I could definitely use some sleep. So we will call it here. I will talk to everyone next week. Thanks everyone for being here. If you're on YouTube, hit subscribe and like, and hit the little bell icon to be notified when we're doing stuff. And yeah, I think that's it. So come join us at ZBrush Jewelry Workshop, where our education platform teaching people. And then thank you, Pixologic, for letting us be here. And like I said, sorry for being gone for 2 weeks, but work called forth. And yeah, have a lovely evening, and we will talk soon.